It is October, but Bitcoin still seems to be stuck in the mud, getting rejected every time that it tries to go up. It was trading over 64,000 yesterday, now back at 62,400. Where is the October we were promised? Where is the new retail interest? What is it going to take to get Bitcoin in the crypto market out of this stagnation, and what is holding it back? I'm going to discuss this and a lot more with one of my favorites, Josh Frank from the Tie. Of course, we have Andrew Parish from ROUNDTABLE on the back half. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. I hope that all of you are having a wonderful Tuesday. For those of us in Florida at the moment, not the most wonderful Tuesday. We're hurricane prepping for the second time in a matter of basically 2.5 weeks. We're taking in all the family from Tampa and friends and trying to figure out where everybody's going to go and locking things down and, you know, the usual. Luckily, I live a bit inland, so hopefully we'll be a bit better. But, man, that storm was having gusts over 200 miles per hour yesterday. Absolute insanity heading this way. So keep everybody here in your thoughts. It could be really bad depending on where this storm hits. And this could be my last stream of the week, depending on if it hits my internet and my power, obviously. But let's talk about the topic at hand. I'm going to bring on Josh right now. We have Bitcoin stuck in limbo. I think you'd say crypto stuck in limbo, right? And there's endless theories for why it's struggling to break through. We have all these articles here blaming China, basically saying that Chinese going to stop their stimulus, therefore Bitcoin can't go up. I would have argued Bitcoin kind of wasn't even going up before we had Chinese stimulus on the docket, so it's just another narrative. I mean, let's dig into what's happening right now with this market.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Bitcoin is, I think a good kind of, I don't want to say comparison, that's not the right word, but what I'm hearing from a lot of funds and a lot of folks in the industry is just uncertainty. Like a lot of funds that are going out and raising capital, they're like, we're really trying to get our first close for raising more capital and before the election because we don't know what's going to happen, right? And I think that's kind of the consensus across the board. And I think that's part of the reason Bitcoin's in a bit of limbo is, I think the reason Bitcoin recovered a bit the last few days is I think that the Harris campaign has had a bad few days. But then again, like, the Trump campaign also had a bad few days, and before that, the Harris campaign had a bad few days, and before that, the Trump campaign had a bad few days, right? Like it's always someone having a bad few days, right? And so I think the market is still uncertain as to what's to come. Also, it looks, yeah. I mean, you could see obviously Trump is up way higher on Polymarket, but keep in mind one person like market bought $3.5 million worth of Trump yesterday, and that like moved the odds by like 4%. And people were like, speculating like who was the person that did that? Like, and it's actually interesting to think like, does buying or it like,
could you affect the election basically by making big bets on Polymarket? I mean, that's what people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Elon and you're putting so much weight behind Trump, why not just buy $20 million worth of Trump like at the money on Polymarket and just seismically shifting the odds? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what that's going to, and maybe that makes the Harris campaign freak out. And then she starts doing more interviews and kills herself even more. As she did on 60 Minutes. If anybody watched that, I've only watched clips, but the clips were a bit of a mess. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of, look, what is the Fed going to do next month? I think the consensus seems to be 25 bip rate cut, but I think 50 bip rate cut was, I don't want to say it was a surprise, but the market reacted very positively to the 50 bip rate cut. And the majority of economists, even if the market thought it was going to happen, the vast majority of economists did not think it was going to happen. And so I think I think the market is waiting to see what happens with rates again, and what happens with the election, because I think if polling continues to improve for Trump, and I think it would need to. I think the market will rally a lot going into the election because Trump has thrown a lot. Obviously what he's going to do for the industry or not do for the industry, comes down to when he's in office, because politicians always make promises. But the promises have been very positive. His engagement's been positive. He was at, PubKey buying hamburgers with Bitcoin the other day. He was at the. What'd you say? Sorry?
It wasn't the fastest transaction.
It wasn't the fake. No. It's why we shouldn't talk about these things. We should have let him do it on a different chain, not Bitcoin. We should have let him do it USDC on like an L2 or something. Look, I think the market's in limbo because the market's waiting to see what happens. It's
What's interesting though, like you talk about the Fed, like we got the 50 bip, obviously rate cut, and now yields are back above 4%. Like it doesn't make much sense, right? There's so much confusion. You'd think that yields would be, diving as things go down, and that has not been what's happened. And just so people see the story I was mentioning, China has said that they'll hit their economic goals, but has basically said they're not going to do any more huge stimulus. And that's sort of what was the trigger for the title here. It's struggling to break through. This is a narrative we're seeing because China's not going to do much more stimulus. But I would argue that Bitcoin is still in its own cycle here. And these things are just temporary noise, right? It may have gone up a little on China stimulus and the 50 bip cut, but we're still just in this range, wondering where the new money is going to come from, which I think leads us down another path of what's going to happen with Ethereum and altcoins and all these other narratives if we don't have huge new money coming in somewhere.
Yeah, I think something to point out, this is just about a year of data. Green line is the correlation between the Bitcoin and S&P's daily return, and it has been moving higher and higher over time. And so, look, people always ask, is Bitcoin risk on? Is it risk off? Right now, it's just moving with the rest of the market, and I imagine that's going to continue, unless there's a Trump. I think the election actually is going to derail that one way or another. I think, look, a Kamala win might just derail Bitcoin temporarily. It all depends as to who she makes SEC commissioner and what happens in her term. But I think people are going to be nervous about the uncertainty.
Yeah, we saw Dan Gallagher floated by the Trump administration. It's funny, at some point I had read a theoretical take that Dan Gallagher could be the replacement for Gary Gensler if the Democrats win. Right, but he's a former SEC commissioner who's pro-crypto and is at Robinhood, obviously. Begs some questions because Robinhood is under investigation by the SEC that he would be running himself, right? So I think there's a lot of, obviously, confusion there. But
his point that he made is like they're getting attacked about like they only have a very few tokens that are listed on their platform. He's like, we tried to do things the right way. We don't have lending. We don't have staking. We're not listing tons of random coins. We've foregone a tremendous amount of revenue as Robinhood, and we're still being attacked, which makes no sense. Is ridiculous. Go after bad players, not us, is the case he's making.
Okay, so we have to talk about this article because it leads us down the road of the next conversation. Ether ETFs see zero flows for second time as Bitcoin ETFs post biggest inflow in 6 days. Zero. The 9 Ether ETFs in the US registered zero flows in either direction. The second time this occurred, zero. Yeah,
that
where
doesn't
does this
mean
fit in the cycle?
That doesn't mean there's zero trading volume, to clarify.
Of course, just means it nets out zero. Yes.
Yeah. So look, I think the challenge is that no one is interested in ETH right now, and I think one thing that a lot of people forget, ETH obviously is an incredible part of crypto's story and continues to be one of the most used chains for DeFi and other applications. But people forget, and Scott, I'm sure you remember this, but 2017 and 2018, when ETH moved to pretty much the same point it is now, that was all driven by ICOs. Like, people forget this. This kind of blanked out of people's memory, right? But people needed Ethereum to participate in ICOs. When people were raising $2 billion ICOs, $150 million ICOs, $100 million ICOs, ETH was moving because ETH was a currency that was accepted to participate in the ICO. Then we had DeFi summer and we had tremendous demand for ETH for, gas fees to pay for transactions. And we had other, other
NFTs.
use cases. We had NFTs where people were trying to trade. We had other use cases of ETH. The challenge that exists now is that there's no demand for ETH for transactions or to participate in ICOs, right? And so there's no natural demand. And on top of that, now ETH has become significantly less expensive to transact on. You now have all these layer twos that are pulling out, are pulling demand for ETH. And if you think about it, like if you're thinking about getting exposure to ETH, are you just going to buy ETH, or are you going to buy ETH and Optimism and Arbitrum and other L2s? And so the problem is that's really pulling the attention away from Ethereum itself. And on top of that, which is something we talked about very briefly before we came on, you have all of these other L1s and L2s coming to market now. Like, so not only is Solana pulling attention, Avalanche pulling attention, other projects that are already in the market, and Sui recently and Aptos recently, the Move tokens are having kind of their time in the light right now. But you also have Monad launching, you also have Eclipse launching, you also have Movement launching. And so you have a ton of new projects that are also launching, having launches coming up. And I think the challenge is, and this is the challenge that's going to exist broadly in crypto, is how do you get somebody's attention and retain their attention? Because I'd argue there's only been one project or maybe two projects that have done that. The first being Bitcoin, and the second, Solana, I think, has done a good job at retaining attention for now. Right. So the challenge is, though, as more things come to market, it's really difficult. And as we kind of have this mercenary approach to development that exists in crypto, where basically whichever chain gives somebody the best incentives to go and build. Like Ethereum is not giving people incentives to go and build. The incentive before was users, but if users are now fractured across other chains because they're airdrop hunting, and they're searching for points and rewards, then you have developers that no longer have that incentive, and now they're just going to chase, hey, I got a grant by this chain, and now I got a grant by this chain, and this chain invested in me, and I want to be cross-chain. And the challenge is, well, what does that mean for other L1s in Ethereum? And I think it's much more difficult to make the case for Ethereum among institutions as it is to make the case for Bitcoin, because the case for Ethereum is just, and I'm not saying Ethereum isn't an amazing technology. I'm not saying it's not a core part of crypto. I'm not saying there's not usage of Ethereum, right? And people aren't building on top of it, but the narrative is just a lot harder to sell now than it was before. Whereas Bitcoin kind of exists in its own universe because it's Bitcoin. The use case, and we can obviously talk about that, but it's very different.
Yeah, I don't think we need to beat to death the use case. Listen, I've got here's a chart. This is Sui, right? And I actually had shared this down here. It's pulled more than a 2x. But to your point, I mean, this has gone from effectively 46 cents up to over $2 and hit a new high on hype in basically 2 months, right? We talked about Aptos, another one. These are catching a serious bid as kind of the new L1 competitors. This was down at $4. It's trading at $9. You're talking about in 2 months, right? So I will say on the plus side, for the first time, we're seeing select things really show like alt season type movement, but it's very select, and it seems like the same rotation, and lends to the next, I think, natural question that you always have the data and insight on. And it's kind of like, I mean, listen, at the tie, you can see all of this, right? You can see what's happening on chain. Like, where is the new money going to come from that stops this rotation? Because this is clearly rotation, right? This is the people who believe what you just said about ETH moving into something else, but it's the same money. And it's the people who maybe just saw this Sui trade and are like, okay, it's at resistance, it's overbought, whatever, moving into the next thing. Right. And it's just this game. And it's the people who are sick of trading memes on Solana. So they went to somewhere else. Right. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's a couple of things that are worth looking at. Right. The first is how much funding is coming into crypto, into projects, which I'll show you. The second is how much funding is coming into funds. And the third thing is there actual applications and usages of crypto that pulls demand in from outside of our existing industry? So let's start with the first point here. So the first point, so here we're looking at the total number of fundraisers over time. And so you can see actually there are a lot of fundraisers that are happening in crypto, but the blue line is the total dollar value of those fundraisers. So the total dollar value of those fundraisers has gone down as well as the average deal size over time. So the
wait. So this means there's more projects raising, but less money going
there's
into
more
all of those
deals.
projects.
There's certainly more deals happening,
Okay.
but there's less money. I think that can be explained in a few different ways. I think one of the ways that explains that is I think people have realized late stage growth investing in crypto is really difficult because late stage investing like Series B, Series C, and these aren't just tokens. This is crypto as a whole. This is companies raising money, right? People have realized investing in crypto at a later stage is very difficult because it's very difficult to get exits, right? Like if you think about crypto companies that have had serious exits, Coinbase has gone public, obviously, which has been an amazing success. And there have been miners that have gone public. But other than that, there really hasn't been an acquisition over a few $100 million. And so if you're a fund and you're thinking about investing at a $500 million valuation, $1 billion valuation, which is where you see these very large check sizes, it's unlikely that you're going to get a return. So most of the money that's coming into crypto is coming in at an earlier stage. People are realizing that's how I get major returns. That's how I can actually generate I can generate capital back for my investors. And so I think what's happening is we're getting a much larger amount of early stage funding in early stage round. There's a lot of early stage crypto investors, and that's kind of what we're seeing in the market. And that's what I'm hearing from funds as
and
well.
And those are smaller checks. So that explains
smaller checks at an earlier stage. Correct.
Yeah.
So that's
okay, so that was number one.
That's one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is, are funds raising money? And so you can actually track if funds are raising money by looking at what's called Form D and DA. So any fund that's based in the US has to file a Form D, which is basically a filing that says, hey, this is who we are, this is how much capital we've raised. And then every year they have to do an annual amendment to that called the Form DA. Can you pull this up?
Yeah. And
so here you can see, we're tracking kind of every capital raise that's happening in crypto in terms of, both Form Ds and DAs. And so you can see here, there's actually been a little bit, like Pantera just raised another $23 million last month. Arca raised another $4 million. They've raised about $197 million total.
Arca's still raising money?
Yeah, I mean,
they still have my money. I think we're down like 90% after Luna's, even here in the bull market. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, trigger word.
But you can see all of the different funds that are raising capital. Here's a $37 million raise from 1RT, $25 million raise from Blockchain Investment Group. But the thing to point out here is there's nothing huge yet, right? And if you think about the 2021 bull market, a lot of these funds were going out and they were raising $400 million fund ones. They were raising $300 million or fund twos, $250 million raises. We haven't seen funds raising those amount of capital yet. But I will say, and this is more kind of from conversations, it sounds like funds are a lot more positive that some of the big allocators, and I've talked to some of the big allocators that were investing last cycle, are coming back. A few of them are going to re-up in the funds that they're already in. And so I do expect this number to start increasing. I don't think we're going to see funds like if somebody raised a $300 million fund last time, I don't think it's going to double and they're going to raise a $600 million fund this time. But I do think there's a chance they raise close to or a similar amount of money if they performed well to the last fund that they were in, because I think a lot of their existing investors, even if it's not new investors, a lot of their existing investors come back into the market. So that's the second thing that you have to look for, is how much capital funds are raising. I think there's two parts to look at. Obviously, there's the venture part, because that's going to lead to funds funneling into projects at an earlier stage and seeding them. But I do think what's more important is the liquid part, right? Are liquid hedge funds raising more money? Because we need to make sure that there's a bid, right? There's somebody, you throw a bunch of fishing rods, is anybody going to bite, right? And so the question are there funds ready to come in with new capital for all these new token launches? And I'm not sure what the answer to that is yet. Historically, venture funds have been able to generate much better returns, but I do think now that's going to be a lot harder, especially with unlocks. I think people thought their returns were a lot better than they're going to end up being because of all of these unlocks, right? Funds that were maybe up 10x or maybe only up 3x now because they're not fully vested out of positions.
Paper gains are the killer of every portfolio in crypto. I'm telling you, every one of us who's been here for a cycle before especially if you were an investor and not just buying tokens, you looked at what your portfolio is worth with tokens that weren't even in your portfolio yet. Promised tokens of vesting investments made you feel like you were worth, but by the time they actually unlock, you're in the depths of a bear market, right? And now we have all of the rest of these unlocking into what promises to be a bull market. I mean, you saw the Celestia unlock, right? It's like 82% of their supply or something at once. Maybe, honestly, maybe that's a good thing, because like whatever's going to happen, it'll find true price discovery when those tokens are unlocked. I mean, I've seen projects that literally give 100% of tokens up front and just say, okay, let it dump and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, here's the TIA unlock. So it's coming up in a couple days.
Guys, how awesome is the TIE terminal, by the way? That I can ask you any question and you can just bring up a screen and you've got all the data. It's nuts.
I appreciate it. By the way, I did not pay him to say that, so I appreciate
it. No, I use it. You guys have seen it. I show it on the show all the time. And honestly, I don't even know how to find 90% of this stuff, even though Josh has walked me through it. So, because I'm a boomer.
So tons of unlocks. That's number 2, right? And I think it's worth tracking. Or, you know, like I mean, I think it's worth thinking about. Like, I actually think liquid funds are going to do well now, because the liquid funds have the benefit of knowing all of these upcoming unlocks, right? They have the benefit of being like, you know what, I'm going to wait 30 days to get into TIA or any of these other assets after a lot of this unlock happens, after this vesting happens. And then when I get in, I can ride the momentum and I don't necessarily have to be locked for 4 years. So I do think there is a really good use case for liquid funds, especially long short. I mean, I think long only is obviously difficult, because obviously your portfolio is only going to perform as well as crypto does. Obviously there's some deviation there, but the market historically has been pretty correlated. But then the third thing is there any use case of crypto that's not crypto? And I was talking to a friend yesterday who brought up this case, and I think it's a really good point, is like, is there somebody who's using a crypto protocol that's not just doing it for some financial reason or for liquidity rewards or whatever? Like, is there an actual use case of one of these protocols where somebody's using it and they don't even think they're interacting with crypto? Because that creates a lot of demand, which should be theoretically a lot more sustainable and true and real demand, as opposed to temporary somebody chasing an airdrop or something else.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. I still just struggle to understand what's going to capture that new inflow, but it always happens in a way that I don't expect every cycle. I mean, you know, we can talk, Bitcoiners love to talk about how it's Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, but like, it was literally Doge and NFTs last cycle that brought all the new money into crypto, right? Maybe it's meme coins on Solana. I literally have no idea. Maybe it's gaming on Ton. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's one thing that I think the market is really excited for is Gunzilla on Avalanche, which is now on Xbox and PS5.
That's one of my bigger investments, like being transparent. I never share anything, but one of my friends, who I won't go into names, who's a VC, who like definitely was in everything for the last few cycles, has literally sold everything he has to like go all in on Gun and their ecosystem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's also really interesting to look at what that does for Avalanche. So one thing that we do on the TIE is we track not just Avalanche C-Chain, but Avalanche has all of these L1s that used to be called subnets. And so we're tracking kind of an aggregation. And I do think you're going to see a tremendous amount of transactions and activity. And a lot of people do value, or they look at the number of daily active users and transactions and fees and other metrics in crypto. I think those are all going to be in Avalanche's favor. So right now, the Gunzilla's on testnet. It's not on mainnet yet. So you're not yet seeing all those transactions.
Sick.
But I mean, I think it's in the millions and millions of transactions that are occurring on testnet. And I imagine that's going to grow in mainnet. I mean, it's the first real game. I think we actually might have talked about this on a previous.
Well, we talked. So last year at Consensus, like, which is over a year ago, your booth was across from Shrapnel. So we talked about that because we both went over and kind of looked at that game and we were like, oh, there's actually going to be real games.
Also on Avalanche, by the way.
Yeah. And Off the Grid is a game. Gunzilla Games is the parent company, but the game that everybody's playing is Off the Grid. And this is like Fortnite, Call of Duty quality on Xbox, on PlayStation, and has a token and NFT element to it, and it's real.
Yeah, no. I mean,
what that means for the value of the token or the NFTs, I have no idea. Right. So I'm hoping that that's going to be exceptionally bullish. Like I said, it's one of the few things I've actually tried to actively get into. OTC deals happening on it. I mean, there's a lot going on behind the scenes there, but it's exciting. I think gaming in general could be like one of those things that we finally see this cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I think seeing a real AAA game is cool to see, and seeing it on crypto. And I think the more important question is, do other game developers then think about crypto if this is successful?
That's right. So we've you and I have discussed this. I know we're up against time, but gaming was sort of stuck in the middle, right? We didn't have any blockchain games being built that were quality enough to capture mainstream adoption. And we didn't have any actual AAA game makers incorporating crypto in any meaningful way, right? So now if we admit, hey, this is someone who's crypto native making a AAA game, that could lead to number two, to your point, which is they see it, and now you get the Epic Games or whoever these are, Rockstar.
Well, I don't know if Gun Token comes at $1 billion valuation and somebody's like, oh my God, I can make 30 million or 50 million or 100 million on my game, but I could also make 200 million on the token. It's pretty compelling.
Yeah, and then there's the NFT aspect, which are basically nodes, that you're staking the NFTs that are part of the game, and those accrue more tokens. It's very compelling. We'll just see if it can reach its promise and its value. But I think gaming could be really, really interesting. Guys, this was completely an unintended conversation for those of you watching. I never talk about anything I invest in because people are oversensitive pansies. And Josh, before I let you go, anything else that is worth talking about here? I mean, just generally, do you still think that we're kind of cycling up into Q4 if things go right with the election? Do you think we will see a push?
If things go right with the election, well, I mean, right is subjective. Everyone views right differently.
I don't even know. Right.
If Trump wins, I think the market is going to rip. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. But I'm hopeful that even if Kamala wins, that the market also rips, and that she puts a good SEC chair in. Like, hopefully crypto, the whole promise of crypto was decentralization and breaking away from governments. And the fact that we're concerned about who's president is not the greatest thing in the entire world. So I hope that no matter what, it's positive for crypto. But in terms of your bags and your money, my anticipation is if the polls shift more in Trump's favor and continue to do so, that's a good thing for prices.
I'll take it. Josh, thank you as always for your insight. It's always fun to get a very pragmatic, data-driven view on what's happening with the market. And sorry we didn't catch up more in Singapore, but alas, another busy conference.
It was insanity. It's great seeing you. Good luck with the hurricane.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right, man. Everybody follow Josh. All right, guys. That's what we got there from Josh. I tend to agree, and that was actually an interesting conversation. I will go on a limb and say that when I start talking about catalysts, and I've said this a lot on Spaces, but not here, I do think that gaming could have a fighting chance, whether it's Gunzilla off the grid or any of the other ones. But there are quality games that are going to come out, and they're going to have a crypto element to them. So let's hope that we have more catalysts this cycle than a bunch of hype and vaporware that ends up going to zero. I think that we have a real chance. More exciting than that, though, is I have your literal favorite person on the whole planet waiting in the wings. You guys love him. You love his beard. You love his hats. You love his shows. You love his insight. It's Andrew. It's Andrew Parish. He's here.
Listen. This whole show, the rest of this show, has to be about Gunzilla for the next 15.
Yeah, you don't give a shit about stuff like that. And honestly, man, I saw in the comments, yeah, right, LOL, haha, like you're talking your book. I literally make a point to never. But if someone literally happens to bring up something that I think is awesome, I'm probably gonna talk about it.
I mean, just the name itself, I envision a future. Okay, I envision a future for Gunzilla where Larry Fink is on CNBC and he's like, listen, the future of crypto is Gunzilla. right?
It is.
I
It
see
is.
that in
Look at
your
it.
future, in my
Look at it.
future. Oh, dude, I pulled it up. I pulled it up.
Yeah, it's
There's
sweet,
never
man.
been real talk. There's never been a more ripe and one would think easy, simple on ramp for crypto at large than gaming. It's already, everybody from like age 8 to 48, whether they'll admit it or not, play game. I'm one of the weird ones that don't play games, but I watch my kids play games like crazy, and I Lord knows I've invested in these games more than I'll ever care to admit with, buy these bucks or those bucks or this cat or whatever it happens to be. It's part of the process. It's part of the ecosystem already. They're just at only one person, one game has to catch fire.
Look at this.
I know. It's incredible. It really is incredible. It really is incredible. And if there's just one game, one that also somehow connects a token or connects crypto or connects the next version of NFTs, everybody hates that phrase now.
That looks like Denzel.
It will.
And this guy looks like King Harold from Vikings as I'm watching it. Anyways, my ADD, Yeah,
okay, it will take off. Like it will take off. One would think that would be the platform, Gunzilla or not Gunzilla. That gaming would be the platform where things could really go nuts. The thesis from like a guy like Jack Dorsey associated with Bitcoin is that, the internet needs money, right? The internet needs a native currency and thus Bitcoin, right? That's his thesis. Well, this is a version of the internet and currency. Like right now, the internet kind of does have currency in gaming, right? So whether it's Roblox or whether it's Fortnite or whether it's Call of Duty now, you can't really play these games in a meaningful way without spending money on the platform itself.
Yeah, might as well get some value out of that.
Jeez. Yeah, right. So at some point there's going to be, I think your thesis is right, associated with gaming and crypto having a moment. I don't know when that is.
I don't know if it'll happen or not, but it is one of those few things that actually logically makes sense. But that
one would think, right? What one would think.
This is not what I signed you up for, though.
No, this is not at all. I did not come here for Gunzilla. I was roped into this conversation.
Look, she has her Nintendo. Valerie has her Nintendo since she was a kid. Any advice for upgrade? I still just play Nintendo. I mean, I do. My kid has a Switch, so I play Mario Kart still, like just to dominate and whoop them. But I also have not advanced. But I did check out this game because I was, investing in it. And
well, I mean, if you're any, meaningful, respectable gamer, you're a PS5 guy.
I stopped at Halo. That was the last, we did obviously GoldenEye, like for the
show. I think the last time I played games was PlayStation 2, and I think
people are asking. You cannot buy it yet. It's in testnet. It hasn't mainnet, but it'll be the gun.
No,
you can't. No, you cannot.
Back to the issues at hand. Speaking of gaming and the gamification of returns, my friend, another 5% last week on the 10,000K portfolio. Look at that entry and that exit, dude. No human being can do that. No chance. Like, okay, you're a human being. Maybe you can get the entry right there at 928. But there is no way you're pulling off that exit at the tippy top, and then literally the next candle and a half is a dead drop. Okay? That is what our products do right there. That's the picture. So you're in the market for 3 to 5% of the time that the markets are open every month. And you go in and you grab that performance and you put it in your wallet. Okay, so that takes the 10K portfolio to 47.5%, 47.2 or 47.5 since we started. It's almost 50%, man. And if I added up all the time, so to speak, in the market, for that 47+% to have happened in that 10K
like 10 hours.
portfolio.
Not even.
No, we're probably talking about a total of maybe 4.5 hours. Like, dead serious. The Sharpe ratio with our algorithms is off the charts, and it's supposed to be. People that are have spent time in finance that use our products, they really appreciate the fact that this is diametrically opposed to the idea of passive investing. But on a day-to-day basis, the actual way that it plays out is passive. So you have a tool that's going in and extracting performance on your behalf, but you don't have to sit at a computer and do anything about it. You do nothing, right? You allow the algorithms to do what they're supposed to do. So it's incredible stuff. On top of that, the 10K portfolio at 47.5. If you're in our concierge program, in the last 2 months, you've printed 30%. So, people always ask us when they get on calls with us, well, does the concierge program, is it better performance? You bet it is. You bet it is. We're careful, we're under promise, over deliver type of folks. We're careful with how we talk about performance, and it's important to be conservative, but the numbers are the numbers. And
I have a comment here that is worth addressing from Wits, who's always here. If nobody ever lost money in this product, they would not need to sell it. There are times when it takes losses.
Yeah, absolutely. There are times when it takes losses. In fact, over the past 2 weeks, I think there were like 5 trades and there were 2 down trades. But here's the thing. We have stop loss protection on the downside with 80% of our products, meaning that if we enter a position, you're not going to lose more than 2% on that position. So we can show you a spreadsheet of the last 4 months of trades just in our ES and MES products. Those are S&P 500 products. You're looking at 14, I think 16 trades. 3 of them are to the downside, but every one of them are less than 2%, 1.3, 1.4, 1.7 to the downside. And then when you see to the upside, you're talking about a factor of 2 or 3 to the upside versus those downside losses. Listen, I got to give a shout out to our guy that hasn't been on the show for a while, Tillman. Tillman is kind of the brain.
He goes on the Bitcoin and weird.
He does. I've told him
weird. He never shows up here. Weird. It's like he doesn't like me.
He's gonna show up here in a couple of weeks. I told him, but listen, man, he's a math guy. He's a huge ex-football player, but he's a lineman. The linemen are the smart guys on the football team. And he's a big brain behind our algorithms and does a lot of work with our research and development teams at the top end to create this stuff. And he's created some really remarkable products. It's fun to watch people enjoy the process with us, where they come in a little bit skeptical and then they realize that, holy cow, this works the way these guys say that it works. And then they're like, okay, if it works with 10 grand, does it work with more money? Yes, it does. If it works with more money, does it work with even more money? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So
people we've had a lot of people double, triple, quadruple. I mean, I've seen it.
People follow the path, right? People follow a particular path. So, meanwhile, while you and I are on the show, clearly our energy is pushing Bitcoin higher. It
happened yesterday too, and it went to 64, and I got all excited, and then here we were listening.
Yeah,
I don't know what to think of that, but let's talk about a few things though, like outside. So, okay, first of all, I'm going to just do the thing now because I'm going to bring it up because people are going to ask and they're going to bother me. It's the Arch Public. It's right here, thearchpublic.com. Set a call to talk to you. They'll walk you through it. Guys, there's hundreds of you probably now that I know are using this, and I haven't heard a complaint. And I will say this. So there was a time actually where I was like, I need to make sure this shit is as good as I think it is. And I literally called like my buddy at TradeStation. You remember this?
Yeah, I do.
Because this trades on TradeStation. And listen, I'm like, I don't want to I'm pretty like diligent about what we do. I'm using it myself. So obviously and he made a comment. I'm going to say this like transparently, the head of crypto at TradeStation. And that's where this is trading. He said to me, listen, I'm going to look into this more deeply. I'm going to call the team and see what's happening. he knew you guys obviously, and he said these are the largest accounts that we've added to TradeStation, and we haven't gotten a single customer service complaint.
Yeah.
And he said if these were people losing tons of money, I would be hearing about it every single day. Guys, this is fact. I'm not lying to you. This is like part of the due diligence. I have no idea what will happen in the future. We could take 30 losses in a row. Anything could happen. But I mean that, and then I vetted everything, and it's pretty so then you get these people that say, is this stuff as good as Voyager and BlockFi? The natural comments. Yes, I've learned to do better due diligence, guys, but in my defense,
well, here's the
I
difference.
was being lied to by the CEO every day of my life. So.
Yeah, here's the difference there is that we don't custody your funds. We don't touch your money, right? Your money is on a FINRA, SEC, US-based exchange that competes with Fidelity and Schwab, TradeStation. It's your money.
It's trading stocks, guys.
Your account with your name on it. You've got an app on your phone that's not an Arch Public app. It's TradeStation app. And you have access to your funds 24/7. You push a button and it sends it anywhere that you want to. You don't talk to us. You don't call us about your money. Our algorithms are overlaid on top of your account, and they do what they're supposed to do. And again, we have an entry-level product, our gateway product, where effectively it's a prove it type of product. It's $99 a month, and you get to prove that liquidity. You get to prove TradeStation. You get to prove our algorithm. You get to prove our support and staff and all those things. And if people have the capital to move from 10,000 to 25 to 50, literally we've seen over the past 6 months, within 3 to 6 weeks, people upgrade because they're like, okay, I've tested everything out. This is what it is. So yeah, it's we love what we do. We love our customers. And listen, there's risk involved in anything associated with money and capital and returns. But I'll just say this again. We love what we do, and we love our products. And
people ask you to provide tax documents. Guys, it's trading on an exchange. You download it from the exchange like anything else. I'm answering for you because I know the answer. You go to TradeStation, will give you all of your trades, and you report it as such. And it's actually from trading the futures contract, so the tax implications are not as bad. But none of that has to be handled by Arch Public. What he's trying to explain to you is you have an account on TradeStation. If you were trading it or a bot is trading it, all of the other things are the same.
Yeah, it's a place like TradeStation. They're required by the SEC, the NYSE, like 12 different regulatory bodies associated with finance. Where there's bottom line, there's like a button on TradeStation where you're like, give me my tax documents, and it's downloaded via a PDF in like seconds. They have to do that. Right. I mean, it's
like E-Trade or Schwab.
Well,
these are not crypto trades. Also, it's just not complicated.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. This is not like trying to go to some foreign exchange and figure out your cost basis, trading in and out of Bitcoin to altcoins and stuff. It's pretty straightforward here.
It's very simple. It's hand a document to your accountant if you use an accountant.
I'd like to show you something important, though. This is important.
Ready.
Based on our former conversation, this is important.
Good. Ready.
The least attractive male hobbies.
Sweet.
1 through 5. Playing video games. So someone was saying, hey, this guy hasn't played video games in 30 years, but he's telling us about cool games. That's a fair point. I know nothing about gaming. I just know that it's big. Number 2, collecting figurines. Number 3, crypto. Number 4, online trolling. Number 5, gambling. I would venture to guess there's some of you in the comments who are all of those, and may also be women. So I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, listen. Online trolling. I mean, you and I have both.
That's a hobby. That's literally a hobby. This is being listed as a hobby. When did trolling become a hobby?
There's a reason
why. My hobby is
bullying
bullying little kids.
There's a reason why Reply Guys as a moniker actually exists, right? Online trolling is a thing. I'll post something about Bitcoin, and inevitably there's a little group of people that will send me charts from the last 5 minutes that it's gone down by 0.05%. And I'm like, dude, I just send that. Oftentimes I just ignore it because who cares? But every once in a while I'm annoyed, and I'll just send them a year-long chart, and it's up 123% or whatever. And I'm like, what are you doing? Get off my feed. I don't really
What do you
block
guys?
people.
Yeah. What do you guys in the comments do for fun? I want to know your hobbies. We got
Yeah.
we have a trolling hobbyist. Skinny skiing. Skinny skiing. That's a reference from Caddyshack, right? Skinny skiing. Yeah. That's good. Oh, he just said who got the Caddyshack reference. I did. I know skinny skiing. Come on, tuna colada. Come on, man.
That guy said
pool
trolling hobbyist here. That's
Yeah.
outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the
really
Caddyshack reference. Of course I did. Smoke weed every day. It's like the big
Yeah.
dog, smoke weed every day. And we got all these people talking about the video games they watched. I saw somewhere up here a Castlevania. I love that. That was the first Nintendo game I had when I actually bought a Nintendo. Was the original Castlevania. I saw some Tecmo Bowl people in here. Bo Jackson, literally unstoppable.
If you want me to really date myself, I was a huge Double Dribble fan. Okay.
Oh, Double Dribble was the shit.
Double Dribble was amazing, and it had a glitch in it where if you basically flew to the right-hand corner and shot, like falling out of bounds,
corner 3-pointer, cannot miss.
It went in every single time.
Did you guys ever play Nintendo Ice Hockey with skinny guy, medium guy, and fat guy?
Yes, that's right.
God.
Same thing with RBI baseball. Right?
Yeah.
The same kind of figures with RBI baseball, right?
Yeah, I think the first version of RBI baseball I had was on a Commodore 64.
Oh, yeah, that's embarrassing a little bit.
Before we got an Atari and played Pong. Yeah, I mean, I was there for all of it. So don't tell me about my lack of knowledge of video gaming. You kids don't know about video gaming. Yeah, look at this. See, we've got people. This, like, as is proven when we see who signs up for Arch Public, I know that my audience is us.
That's right.
It's us.
That is right. We are the avatars of your audience. That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Dr. J versus Larry Bird. My God, man. In my mind, that was Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird, but it was Dr. J versus Larry Bird.
You're right. Magic wasn't cool enough yet.
Atari Warriors, Contra, ABBA, select start, up, down, left, right, ABBA, select start, infinite lives.
Yeah.
Where are you people? This is so much better than a conversation about Bitcoin, man.
I mean, obviously, everybody that's listening to this and is on your channel played a version of and to the end of the original Super Mario Brothers. I mean, that was like, obviously. Obviously they did that. And
Legend of Zelda, the original
Legend of Zelda.
The little Hershey squirt dudes.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing about Legend of Zelda is the cartridge was gold. Right. That was like, oh man, this has got to be the coolest game in the world. You know, you put it in.
Yeah, this thing's not working.
That's right. Who invented that, by the way? How did that become a ubiquitous thing without the internet? Like how did that become?
How did anything go viral without the internet?
Right. How did we know to blow in the cartridge? And that was something everybody did, but nobody was connected to anybody. Right.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah, that was not online gaming for all you kids.
No.
Oh, God. So anyways, guys, now that we've talked this to death, anything else, listen, before I let you go, like anything else we should be watching? We have this conversation. Bitcoin stuck in limbo. Here's why it's struggling to break through, right? I mean, we get it. Like, are you looking for any catalyst here? We still have inflows into the ETFs generally. A lot of things I think to look forward to. We talked about the election. We know that you've talked about wirehouses coming online. Does any of this China stimulus and Fed cuts and blah, 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 is that going to affect the cycle?
Here's my messed up mind. I'm laying in bed last night right before I fall asleep, and I'm thinking about Bitcoin ETF inflows. And
that's right. Yeah, right next to Pornhub.
Yeah, right. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm reminding myself from a price standpoint that every time that any ETF inflows are of size 100 million or more at any ETF shop, whether it's BlackRock or Bitwise or whoever, they've got to go out and they've got to go buy Bitcoin. Well, what does that presuppose? Someone has to sell them that Bitcoin, right? So we get a lot of conversations about, well, if ETFs are buying so much and they keep buying so much, and why hasn't price, blah, blah, blah. Remember, when they've got to go out and buy Bitcoin, somebody has to sell them Bitcoin. So if you're wondering why price has meandered around in the 60s now for, let's call it 6 months, that's why there are equal amounts of sellers and buyers. At some point that will adjust. At some point there'll be a move higher. And a reminder that those moves higher happen, between 8 to 12 days every year. Probably the best guy that talks about that is a guy by the name of Tom Lee at Fundstrat. And he's a TradFi guy, a great research house. And, he talks about the 8 to 12 days every year where Bitcoin, really moves higher, 5, 7, 10% on any given day. You've got to be in it, quote unquote, to win it with Bitcoin. And are there any quote unquote catalysts? I don't know. Have there ever been massive catalysts associated with those 8 to 12 days, or have they been borderline somewhat random? They've been pretty random, right? I subscribe to, your ongoing thesis that we'd have this 6-month lull after the halving, because we always do. And then there'd be a move higher, and we're in that space right now. We're going to see, that Q4. Oh, by the way, since now Bitcoin is much more integrated into traditional finance, right? There's going to be, late October, November into December. I think there'll be some rebalancing of portfolios, meaning hedge funds, family offices will add more exposure to the Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin in general, because they weren't exposed enough in terms of performance for the entire year. So the way that people try and catch up, so when they have their year-end reviews with their biggest clients, why weren't you exposed to Bitcoin? Oh, well, we are. Look, we have extra now. We have extra now. We figured that out. We did our due diligence and we figured it out, and we added more. So that's how they cover up not being as exposed to it as they should have been. So we're going to see that would be considered a catalyst. It's just, how does it play out, as it relates to pricing Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis? I'm not sure.
So I don't know how much we're allowed to say about what's coming, but I'm going to tell you guys, it's not going to be as of next week, but soon. You guys, Macro Monday has obviously been like my most popular, consistent show. And I've talked to my audience about my sort of like desire to do more panel-based shows. And so the idea here that Andrew and I have been tossing around and will be happening is that the two of us will be a part of a 3 to 4 person panel on a Tuesday show.
Yeah.
The Tuesdays are going to morph into basically like me moderating a conversation between you. And I'm not sure if we're supposed to discuss who.
I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good. The documents have been signed and signed off on. I think we're good. Yeah.
So you can tell them.
Yeah. So our Bitcoin algorithm is going to launch on Gemini. And so we're going to have a bunch of conversations with Gemini folks. We're going to have a bunch of conversations with Bitcoin ETF folks. We're going to have a bunch of conversations with custody folks. I think the show on Tuesday is going to be fairly Bitcoin focused. And then as the ecosystem around Bitcoin continues to grow and grow and grow and grow, because it will, there's going to be no shortage of things to talk about associated with Bitcoin, not only as an ethos and as a cypherpunk movement, but also as it grows and eats more and more percentage of portfolios associated with traditional finance. It's at an inflection point, and the opportunity to talk about our product and our work with Gemini, as well as the growth of Bitcoin as an asset or as an asset class even. There'll be no shortage of not only conversation, but guests that we'll be bringing on over the coming months.
Yeah. So effectively a primarily Bitcoin focused show around the power of dollar cost averaging, but then obviously custody exchanges. It's going to be fucking awesome. We're going to get everyone. It's going to be awesome. Maybe even two really tall twins.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Who you may know from hits like founders of Gemini and the social network. But you guys get the idea. Not making any promises, but it's gonna be awesome. Once again, guys, go check out thearchpublic.com if you want to know what the hell we've been talking about the whole time. And you can follow Andrew obviously at AP_abacus on the X Twitter machine. You're going to be seeing a lot more of Andrew's smiling face. We got to go, guys. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you so much, man.
You bet. Have a good one.